Welcome to today's webinar, Multiple Pathways to a Non-Traditional Career, Strategies to Address Student Interests and Needs, presented by Scott Solberg. My name is Greg Nagy, and I am the Virtual Community Learning Manager from The Ohio State University who provides technical support for the STEM Equity Pipeline project. Before we start this presentation, I would like to go over some housekeeping items for this webinar. This webinar is scheduled to last roughly 1 hour and is being recorded in order to view this presentation in its entirety later. The recorded webinar will be available in the next few days on the stemequitypipeline.org website. As you've already found out, you will be watching the presenter present slides through the Adobe Connect interface while listening to them talk over your computer speakers. All the participants' microphones have been automatically muted. You can also make the presentation larger by clicking the full screen button at the top of your Adobe Connect window. You can also download the slides from the Files pod. Click on the file to download and then click on the Download File button. This will open the file as a link in a different tab in your browser. The presenter will ask for questions during the presentation, and we can take questions at any time by using the chat function at the bottom of your Adobe Connect window. We will read and respond to the questions as we go along. I would like to start this webinar by introducing Freda Walker, consultant for the STEM Equity Pipeline project. Freda?
Good morning and welcome to the second in this series, Non-Traditional Pathways. These webinars highlight the latest research regarding career preparation and provide strategies that you can implement. Support for the webinar series, let's see, I need to change slides right here. Support for the webinar series is from the Minnesota Department of Education and Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. They funded these webinars to inform all who have a role in helping students understand successful paths to high-skill, high-wage, and high-demand jobs. On their behalf, I welcome each of you and our presenter, Scott Solberg. Additional funding is from the NAEP and the National Science Foundation. I'd like to start by just finding out how you found out about this webinar. We already have 100 participants, which is an excellent turnout. And if you could, we're going to run a poll, and you can, Greg, if you can start the poll, and we can see, have people answer. Okay, Greg, I think that we can broadcast the poll.
Okay.
So as we look, we can see that most of you, well, I don't know, it's almost equal. I heard from the the STEM Equity Pipeline email listserv, and we also, a lot of people must have forwarded on to other colleagues, so we appreciate that cooperation in advertising the webinars. I also, let's see, we got a few out of the live chat. Okay, oh, very good. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. These webinars, all of our webinars, are archived on the stemequitypipeline.org website. Also, we will be providing a certificate of completion. If you are from Minnesota, you will receive it from the Minnesota Department of Education. And if not, and you fill out the information at the end of the webinar, then you will receive it from NAEP, the National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity. We do have a resource document that is down below, is a PDF of the webinar, and you can see it on the left-hand side of your screen where it says Files. If you click on that file and highlight it, then the download button will highlight and you can download it to your computer. And I encourage all of you to do that if you would like to have the information from this webinar. We also have a chat function, and I already see that there are a variety of you chatting. We would like for you to present your questions to the presenter by chat in the chat function, and I will be taking those questions and trying to put them over into the notes section. Scott will be pausing 2 or 3 times throughout the presentation so that questions can be asked, and also at the very end of the webinar we can take care of any questions that are remaining. So please use the chat function to ask questions, also to share resources if a topic is brought up and you actually have some resources or information that you can share. The second poll I'd like to take is just to find out who is participating. This also will give our speaker an idea of who's on the webinar. So the poll is just, you can see the poll, and here we go. You're a fast group. I can see that a variety of you are putting in other. If you are in other, will you please put into the chat function what organization that you're with? Okay, Greg, let's broadcast the results, please. Thank you. Scott, you can see that we have school and college administrators, we have state staff agencies, we also have counselors and student services staff, a few teachers and faculty members, and then a variety of others who are letting us know who they are, what organization they're with. So we appreciate that. I have a second poll that I'd like to have you take, and that is that we have discovered that at many times there's more than one person watching the webinar with you. You can see I'm asking you to answer these questions. Either you're watching it by yourself or with one other person. So let's run that poll. Thank you. Okay, let's broadcast that result so we can just see. Or maybe we aren't broadcasting that one. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you can see that most of you are by yourself, but we do have a few people that have other people with them, and we do encourage teams to watch our webinars. So thank you for the information on that. And let's go to our next slide. I would like to introduce Scott Solberg. He is an Associate Dean and a professor from Boston University. Welcome, Scott, and you're on. Oh, Scott, I need you to unmute your microphone.
How was that?
Thank you. That's much better. Thank you.
I was having a nice conversation by myself. So thank you. I wanted to say how it's exciting to be able to take the remainder of this hour to talk about individualized learning plans and really focusing on career development, how we can use this hopefully within your context as you talk about encouraging STEM careers. It looks like Northeast Iowa is having a big group of 8 watching, so shout out to Northeast Iowa Community College. And it does appear that there's a lot of community college participation as well as school counselors. So within that, we'll try to make sure that a lot of the conversation and examples can fit within those contexts, but use the chat. And Freda will alert me if there's some questions that come up, and we will take some pauses as well. Just a little bit about who I'm in effect representing. It's the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability for Youth is a technical assistance center. It's funded from the Office of Disability Employment Policy, which is the federal government's arm within the U.S. Department of Labor. While I'm a professor at Boston University, I've been working with this collaborative as a PI on the ILP research now for about 6 years. And in that time, we've engaged in a number of research studies, from talking and surveying students, interviewing students, parents, teachers, as well as policy analysis and drafting really what you're going to be seeing today, which is what we believe are some of the practice strategies for how ILPs can, the effectiveness and power and quality of ILPs can be maximized. I'm not going to spend as much time on the actual research in terms of the methodologies, and certainly there are other webinars, or I can certainly come back if people are very interested in the actual data. I love to talk about that, but today we're really hitting the high points of what we found and hopefully things that you can use in your practice. So, general idea of individualized learning plans. It's going on right now in a number of states, District of Columbia, where they're actually either being strongly encouraged or they're actually fully mandated. Minnesota is one of the most recent states to actually put out a full mandate that all students will build an individualized learning plan that would happen. Most of the places are looking at middle school as the start point. Certainly no later than 9th grade. Annually updated each year. They're called by many different names, and I know we've got other states on the call. So the National Collaborative website, you'll see a reference at the end if you want to see what your state looks like, whether it's mandated, whether it's not. We have a list of the 37 states and their names as well. The basic purpose of this at the pre-college level, and then let's also focus on what it would look like at the 2-year and 4-year college level. At the pre-college level, we're trying to help engage youth in designing and finding relevance within the education process. And we're doing that by supporting youth in identifying a career goal or pathway, and then building an education plan to support their successful engagement and then hopefully entry into that career pathway. It is not an individualized education plan, which comes out of the disability language from IDEA. The individualized education program has similarities, especially as we talk about a transition plan, which is part of the IEP when students turn 16. In that plan, they're needing to look at post-secondary plans of what they're going to do. There does need to be some exploration. What the ILP does as an individualized learning plan is really focus on in many cases, a school-wide effort throughout the year to really engage students in that process in a more in-depth way, so that for students with disabilities, by the time the IEP meeting occurs, they have the assessment information, they have their own goals and plans, and the child and their parent can actually be much more engaged in guiding the meeting. So there is a connection to the IEP, but this is a separate process. We've decided to really talk about the ILP as two pieces, and this is what will give us up to the 2-year and 4-year college as well. There's a documentation. There is a component of the ILP in which the student is in an EPortfolio, if they're using a career information system, where they're talking about their goals, they're looking at their plans, they're talking about course taking, they're looking at both the in and out of school learning opportunities that they need to achieve or that they might be achieving. They might be posting leadership certificates. It could be apprenticeships. It could be stackable credentials. All of this would go into the document of an ILP. And in most of the career information systems that include the ILP, that ILP can actually be sent out to an employer. It can be sent out to an admissions counselor, and it becomes a way of showcasing the range of skills and the interests that the individual has. We flip the ILP into the 2-year college, and we call it a portfolio. So this would be very akin to what you really could build out of a LinkedIn account. You could actually, within the LinkedIn, if you think of it as a portfolio, you can actually add a lot of more detail than people often do about the different credentials they have, the different skill sets, and things like that. The career information systems, many of which are also in your 2- and 4-year colleges, also have this portfolio system built in. So same kind of document, but we're using it at the pre-college level, we're using it to help support their pathway into a 2-year, 4-year college or training program. And then at the adulthood, we're using it as more of career planning and management, the ability to really showcase the continued development of their skills, so that as they go to an employment sector, they may have video, they may have other kinds of testimonials and information supporting the fact that they have a good range of workforce readiness skills. So that's the documentation, an ePortfolio. We're going to focus more today on the process, which is how we're providing access to quality career development, and not just access to the activities, but the focus on building skills. And there are 3 sets of skills that we see the ILP helping with. One is the self-exploration skills. Is the individual, whether child or adult, have an understanding of who they are in terms of, it could be in terms of the RIASEC profile, it could be in terms of values, learning styles, whatever those are. Do they have a sense of who they are and how those particular qualities can fit within the world of work? And so the career exploration skills is that connection to the world of work, as well as the education pathways that it takes to succeed there. This includes being able to examine labor market information, all of the things that you do already in career and tech ed. But rather than focusing it on an activity, what we're looking at now is that these are skill sets, and that if the person's moving through the high school as well as in the college setting, can they demonstrate that they have these skill sets? The third phase is the career planning and management, and this is where we're talking about work-based learning, leadership, financial literacy, we're talking about volunteer activities, civic engagement, all of those workforce readiness skills, we can call them soft skills. This is a full range of things that really make a person employable at the end of the day. We know we're rarely hiring a person because they got A grades in a particular class, right? They got straight A's, oh, this is a great person. We hire them because we think we can work with them, because they can work with people. We know they're responsible, they'll get the work done. All of that citizenship, character, and all these other pieces falls into that area called career planning and management. And again, focusing on these as skill sets that they can demonstrate. And I think you can see, especially those working in the 2-year college system, that we're really building these skills out, especially with emerging adults and returning adults. This is a lifelong activity of development. The European Union has certainly taken that on as a challenge to look at. And I think that this allows us entry for the United States to get more involved in this as well. So we have this initiative, College and Career Readiness, and as you can see, we're really focusing now on career readiness as a separate component. That it's about the individual looking at a rigorous set of courses that they're going to take to help support them at the post-secondary career goals that they want to get. We've talked about self-awareness skills, career exploration skills, and then, of course, the career planning and management. So career readiness is something that when we...
Scott?
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
James wanted to indicate, he said, so you're saying that essentially students really need to have a career goal fairly early in their schooling. When should a student have such a career goal?
Great. Thank you for clarifying, James. So what we really want is career goals, and we're going to talk about 3. And we're not talking about it as a career plan that's not going to be changed or open for change. What we're helping is the individual identify a career goal, and in this case, again, 2 to 3, as a way of focusing their understanding of how the education as well as out-of-school opportunities support their development. And so this becomes kind of the carrot or the kind of the future pursuit that we need our youth to get. When should they start that? Well, we've got some data in the STEM literature. John Miller has been studying youth starting in middle school. They're now in their mid-adulthood, and he's been able to identify that those who made it into a STEM professional degree had taken and passed and were successful in algebra before they left the 9th grade. So if we think of that as a target point, okay, when in middle school do we need them on track for that, right? And so if middle school isn't a place where they're identifying STEM career goals as a part of their opportunities, then they're not understanding the math development that it's going to take. The first piece was the algebra, and then the second piece was getting calculus before they left high school. Those were the 2 key academic markers. But the third marker was intentions, that they actually believed and felt strongly that this was a career pathway that they wanted to pursue. But I don't want us thinking that in the 10th grade, I know I want to be this doctor and that's what I'm focused on, but I'm interested in the field of medicine, or I'm interested in engineering, I'm interested, and that becomes a platform, if you will, to focus attention on being successful in the kinds of learning opportunities they have. So it's not about, it's using then the career exploration as a way of facilitating a process, not about trying to help students focus specifically. The caveat is, if we are supporting them in a STEM career, there are decisions they need to make early on, even beginning in middle school, that if they're not doing well in some of these math places, they're going to need to move up a bit some of those skill sets. The piece I'm talking about in terms of reference, there was a special issue in the Peabody Journal of Education last year in spring that focused on a number of studies. I actually have an article in there on the two-year college STEM careers, and it was the same pattern we just described in terms of supporting youth in some of the, they may not be the full four-year degree STEM, but there's, as we know, there's a number of very high-income two-year degree STEM careers that a person can pursue, and so we studied that. But in that journal, there are 4 or 5 articles specific to this longitudinal study of American youth, and it's John Miller, Jonmiller. And I can pause here if there's any other questions, Freda.
Okay. Scott, I don't see any other questions.
Okay, then
I have one person typing, but
yes, not a problem. So, and we'll be able to pause.
oh, wait a minute. It said
Here in a moment.
Okay, so it says in the process, this is the process the same for the older non-traditional student?
Yes, absolutely, and that's kind of the key. That if we can, for the non-traditional student, what's exciting is they're coming in with skills already. So what they don't know necessarily is how those skills can serve them in a various number of ways, and that with the right kind of academic activities in addition to those skills can really set them up to be successful. And so it's helping them see that process through the same pieces: self-exploration, career planning, management. The reason why we focus it on a skill is that once an individual, especially in that emerging adulthood, is going to go through 3 and 4 different careers, they know they can always jump back in because they can go back to their own assessment, they can reassess themselves, they can continue to explore, and then they continue to see what kinds of education opportunities might continue to fine-tune or add to their employability. And I'm defining non-traditional, I was defining non-traditional in lots of different ways. So in this case, it was age. In terms of gender, it is the same process, and we know that for girls, especially as they're moving in middle school, understanding how STEM careers are meaningful to providing the kinds of a better quality of life, the health, the social well-being, the kinds of things that make a stronger community. We know that middle school girls need that going out, because if they don't, they're often stepping out of the STEM pipeline, even though they know they have the career potential. So there, it's not just that they have the skills and helping them see it, but they need to use the career exploration process to see, for example, engineering, that there are these grand challenges out there that are critical. They need water, we need energy, we need certain things out there that they can contribute to, and if they find that as meaningful and building a stronger community, there's a lot of good research indicating that we'll be able to keep them focused on that STEM pathway, and they're not going to veer from it. So that's another way. And then infrastructure in schools to facilitate the plan development. Many schools are, that we have seen that when it's done most effectively, it becomes a whole school enterprise, and so all of the educators provide time during the week, or maybe a couple times a month, to be able to do these ILP activities. What that creates is a strong mentoring relational base between the educator and the student, and it's that caring adult that really carries the day. And the skill sets that they need, by the way, is enthusiasm and loving to learn. And then with your help as a career tech ed supervisor, the school counselor, or special ed administrators, there's training and there's skill sets there to help them on the career knowledge base. But what they really need to do is just get excited about the exploration process. But a whole school process really does help. I haven't studied the 2-year and how that can expand up, but it would certainly, we'd want the same type thing, that as they're coming into courses and different career activities, how are each of those programs supporting youth in seeing the different career possibilities that are available to them, and the relevance, therefore, of the courses that they're taking. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move into the next section, and then we'll pause in a few moments as well for some more questions. So career readiness then, when we've done some research, and this was based on some interviews we did, it is more than one goal, right? So it's having one or more careers of interest and thinking of, and by interest meaning it really is something I find that would be interesting. You know, I'm not asking people to define a particular career pathway or goal as the only one. But they do need to be able to think about what the plans are to pursue it. They need to think about how it connects back to their personal interests, their skills, and their values. They need to think about what are the entry requirements. And then what's really exciting then is, well, what are the other outside school activities? You know, it's not a classroom learning environment that's going to support them in employability. They need these out-of-classroom experiences. So we've got the 4-H clubs, we've got Future Farmers, we got all of these other learning opportunities that are really based on skills. And what the ILP can do is help tie that together so they can see that this is about supporting them in their future. We've done some research showing that when students report that they're engaging in ILPs, they become more self-regulating. They're naturally setting their own goals. They find school more enjoyable, more meaningful, and then that leads into the academic competence. And from there, it blasts off into the 3 areas that the American School Counseling Association is focused on, which is the academic performance, career readiness, as well as the social emotional well-being. So that's been an exciting to see that pathway go in. We talked about schools and how, you know, what's the implementation model. So this is from some schools nationally that we were working with. They felt generally pretty confident in doing the ILPs. There are some discrepancies for students with disabilities, and that's something that we have been focused a lot of our time on and attention as to where and why those discrepancies are there. And we think it's in part because there is a challenge nationally around youth with disabilities and finding jobs and being able to become employed. And we think it's reflective in the fact that educators are not sure yet what to do. So we're focusing a lot of efforts on that. But overall, we've had a lot of positive statements from teachers in terms of loving the process. Now, these are in schools where the leadership values it. There's a whole school kind of implementation plan. So certainly in schools where we don't have leadership, we don't have a full plan, we had teachers that had a different experience because they weren't quite sure what it was or how it goes. But in those schools where we really did feel they were having a positive implementation process, a quality ILP experience, there were some really powerful statements that came up. So I'm giving you some of those. You have these available, so I'm just kind of moving through them quickly so that we have more time for questions as well. Families loved it. The families got it, and they understood that this was now, let me just show you you get the general impression that it was positive. One of my favorite quotes was this idea that we're not focusing on helping students do tests. We're really helping on this concept of launching adults. And that idea that the school is now invested in the whole child was really an exciting piece. Parents really reported strong positive accolades for the schools and for the school counselors and others that were engaged in this. I also like the idea, you know, one of the points of it is that self-regulation. So are you starting to choose, see the reason why they're in these courses and what it's about, and we're getting parents saying yes. And in some cases, even though they didn't do well, it was a reflection of their effort and that they needed to put out more effort because they knew that they had selected it, that this was important to them. So those are some exciting kind of just highlights of what's going on. So I'm going to spend a few minutes now on kind of implementation strategies and what's going on before we get to we'll go back to the career, the 3 phases of career development that we talked about and what that looks like.
Scott,
yes.
Before you start into that, we have a question.
Yeah.
You'll see it there. I haven't moved it over but from Lynn. Is the Atrium article the one in which the outcomes of greater self-regulation are shown?
Yeah, no, that one is one that I have. I have one. I have an article actually. It's not out yet, but it's one that if you write me, email me, I can send you a copy of it. We presented on it, but it's not yet published.
Is it okay if I give them your email address?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's on the end of the slides too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So Communication materials are really key to this whole process, that if you're going to do this kind of activity in the 2-year as well as 4-year and the K-12, we just found that there were a lot of people who were interested and got excited. They just didn't know what it was at first. Families especially were kind of like, where does this come in and what's happening? So we're really focusing on, at step 1, the need to build some of the explanation for the different audiences. So what is it that the student needs to know, the families? What is it that educators need to know? Leadership, what do they need to know? We need buy-in from various different stakeholders. We also need to help support the different organizations and groups that are engaged in ILPs on what they can do. What are the activities? What are the kinds of competencies? We're finding that it's one thing to do career development activities. It's another for those activities to lead towards specific skills and competencies. And what we're hoping is more effort at districts and even at the state level around, well, what are those competencies around work, career, and workforce development that we want everyone to have at these different levels. Another one is the all means all, that the exciting part about individualized learning plans is that it should be accessible for all youth, and that in some cases there's been some questions about whether or not the students with disabilities should be participating, especially those with significant disabilities, and the answer is yes, they should. And we have some states that are coming out with really good language, positive language for that. Let's see, and then as I indicated, the tailoring to the different stakeholders is really important, because you just have to change the language a little bit sometimes to help a leader understand it, or school boards or school presidents. And it's once you've done that, then everybody can get on board. Another element in terms of what we found as we looked across states, a real need for some professional learning to happen around this. We like the idea of a professional learning community where you bring together a smaller group of really interested, excited, and engaged professionals who then work with the larger community to help prepare them with the skills that they need. So it's served as a really good model in the schools. I think it's the exact same model we could use in higher education as well. And it just provides a way to bring a choir together of people that are heavily invested, heavily engaged, while at the same time supporting that group and becoming the leaders to work with the larger system in terms of getting the training and professional development out. But we also need some professional development at the leadership level, so understanding why this is happening. There's a lot of, funding is scarce. There's a lot of initiatives going on. We need leadership to be able to see that the ILP is not really another initiative. It's actually something that ties together everything that everyone's been working towards. So if we're working on a STEM initiative in the school, and we've got literacy and we've got math, we've got students with some mental health challenges and other things, and we're trying to get all of these different things together. It's interesting how the ILP makes it all tie together nicely. That if I want to become this STEM professional and say an engineer, I have to have certain soft skills. I have to have certain math and literacy skills. I have to have all of those elements to be successful. And so the ILP isn't necessarily, or we haven't found in schools that have really got it, that they experience as an extra or an add-on, but something that mobilizes the energy at the student and family level to really get behind the initiatives that are already going on. And then educators need periodic professional development. So one of the places that's been the hardest lift is states being able to provide and consistently, across the years, sustain some of the professional development. It shouldn't be that difficult in today's webinar culture to be able to have some things up, but it will take some funding to get the infrastructure set up. And I've already mentioned, someone was asking how it looks in schools, so the whole school implementation I've talked about, the all means all. One of the most exciting pieces, and this can also be done in a 2-year college setting and perhaps a 4-year as well, is having students get up and give a presentation about their future goals and where they're going and what they're going to do based on the ILP. So in the high school settings, what they've been doing is having an annual student-led parent-teacher conference where the ILP, the student gets up and talks about what they know about themselves, their skills, their values, their interests, the different career possibilities, and then what their plan is, both their long range and then their right now plans. What are they doing right now to prepare for those career opportunities, and what's their plan for the next year. Senior exit interviews is a very powerful place then for the community to see what the schools have produced. And so that's why I'm saying you can imagine this in a 2-year setting as well. This could be part of a process of entering, how are you planning, one semester where we're engaged in it, and then a presentation to say, how am I going to use this 2-year college experience to support me in achieving my goals? But it can also be the exit interview. Here's what I've gained so far, and here's what I plan to keep learning and developing as I continue my strive for employability. And we know that employability now is a lifelong process. So I've also mentioned the skills focus. It's not just did they get access to it, did you take a career interest inventory, did you look at different careers? We need them to be focused on, do you have the skills to do this? And then this becomes a great opportunity for family engagement, both at all levels. There's no reason why families can't be part of the conversation in the pre-college and the college settings around these issues. Work-based learning, and we're going to come back to Al and Alyssa from the state of Minnesota for putting together an incredibly well-designed work-based learning. It's catching fire nationally. Everybody's excited about seeing this model, so yay to the state of Minnesota. This idea that we can think of work-based learning as a developmental process, but what we can also do is think about the different categories of work-based learning that individuals can engage in. And so we have tours, job shadowing, rotations, and it builds up to that paid youth apprenticeship. This is across now really the lifespan, that when an individual comes back to that 2-year college setting, they're also going to need to engage in some work-based learning opportunities. And it may be doing a job shadowing to really see what these different new opportunities might look like before they invest all of the time and energy in the education plan. It might mean adding in some rotations or some volunteer experiences in some of these places to really get some of the skills and really learn about it in depth. From our perspective, this is about career development. From the Department of Labor's perspective, it's about employment, right? It's about perhaps getting paid employment and apprenticeships, which is also important. But from a career development standpoint, we believe that these kinds of experiences allow the person to really think clearly and carefully about whether they really want to pursue it, what are the skill sets, what are the education pathways, what do they really need to focus on to be successful. And we think it only adds tremendous value and motivation back to the individual who's gone through it. This is the beautiful piece that Al and Alyssa put together. Shows a nice colorful spectrum. A little small, so I'm just going to kind of move through it. But this is a great way of looking at and detailing work-based learning. I'm going to pause there for any questions that you might have, or if there's any questions that are coming in, we can do that.
Scott, currently I do not have any questions that have come in. I do not see anyone typing.
Okay, then we're in good shape. All right. So let's move into some resources and some things that can kind of support you. So as part of the work we're doing at the National Collaborative, we've been doing a lot of responding to questions and issues. And one of the questions that came up is, how are we supposed to get a whole school involvement if we don't have activities to work with? How are we supposed to do this throughout the academic year if we don't know what to do with them? And so we put together a how-to guide. You can see it at the high school level. You can certainly take the concepts right up into the 2-year college and 4-year college level because it's a lot of the same kinds of materials, and you'll see the concept. But what it also does is it provides you with a plan for developing the community around career development that you need. So how to design a professional learning community, how to design it as a curriculum. We've tried to address not just giving you access to resources, but access to a process to build your own capacity to do the ILPs. Here's some of the ways, as I've been talking and focusing a lot on competencies and activities. So here's some things that I think we could just some as discussion pieces. So the idea of youth competencies around self-exploration. So are youth able, and young adults and even older adults, can they tell you about their abilities, strengths, skills, and talents, and in that values? Can they tell you what they are? Now, we know that when someone goes to write their resume, they go, yeah, I don't have any skills. Oh, I don't know. And it's out throughout all the age levels that they just kind of get stuck on not seeing how this goes. We know that employers say, I want someone to tell me that they've got something coming in and how it relates to our company. So this ability to communicate effectively and give that little elevator speech of what I'm able to do and how it relates to the specific employment context that I'm interested in is really important. Certainly the social skills. Do I understand what social skills are needed to be successful in the world of work? That's a big piece as well. Question to talk more on resiliency. Yes, I can talk. I will talk on that when at the end of the session. We'll do a little bit on that, or I can give you more on that as much time as we have. So when we talk about career exploration, then it's about goal setting. It's about understanding that I can have a long-term goal, and then what are the short-term developmental ones that I need. It's about having occupational information. Do I really know the critical features of that occupation? And we found a big difference in terms of those students who knew and could tell you something about the occupation and the education pathways to get there. They had more academic self-competence. They had better stress management. They were on a success pathway. You could see it in how they were presenting themselves, and then later in terms of some of these other what we call more the resiliency skills. So there's something about having that information and understanding that kind of gives a strong foundation. And when that's applied in the STEM field, then we know we're moving them towards that intention to pursue those STEM careers. Let's see. And then the career planning management. And this is just an absolutely huge area. Anything you want to talk about that's going to relate to something we've not talked about that you know is related to success probably fits under career planning and management. So it is the ability to do public speaking. It is the ability to think strategically about one's financial plans and about whether the 2-year, 4-year, which is the better economic decision I need to make. It is about, we've mentioned leadership, but it's also about learning how systems work. So how does the civic community operate? And we know that youth and adults engaged in civic engagement learn the different components within a community. This gives them kind of a cognitive template for understanding how organizations operate and the different levels and the different ways in which change occurs. So we have some things on here that are important. It's also the job seeking as well. So it is resume and cover letter writing. It's all of those elements. A lot of our online career information systems will support youth and adults in preparing those. But it's also the idea about how do I go find the job, how do I interview. Those elements are part of career planning and management, but I just don't want it to be focused or narrowly defined in those areas. And then we have a number of other resources that you could go after. These are ones that have been put together either from the collaborative or from the Department of Labor directly. They're very interesting, I think, in terms of providing you with information and organizational strategy that you can immediately share with your community. They're very nice in that way. I mentioned the how-to guide, so here's your link to that, and that's the one that has the activities, the ILP activities broken out into those 3 career development areas as well as the organizational development. We have an ILP fact sheet that helps you to be able to kind of communicate in a it's just a quick 2-page front and back that's just the nature of what ILPs are, what they're about. And then we have a policy brief, which is where a lot of the kind of recommendations you've heard me prepare came from this policy brief. And it's really something we spent a lot of time on in focusing on some key states and incorporating some of our other data. And then we have a home page that has all of our ILP pieces. It also has some of the research-based webinars that we've done. And there's some contact information for me on that. So
Scott?
Yes.
Scott, I have one question that maybe refers to the slide before.
Okay.
Selena has asked, can we access the activities Scott referred to in the self-exploration section? Would that be in the how-to guide?
Yep. So we provided, it's an interactive online piece, and you click on it. Now, you know how links go, so some links may, but we try to use high-quality links, and we're going to actually be redoing it in this next year and updating it. And so definitely there'll be more activities and access as well. But yes, you go to that site. I can maybe click on it right now and see what happens. Is this showing up on your side? Maybe not.
I think that you would have to show your desktop.
Yeah, it doesn't
but
open
maybe
for other people.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe we can get Greg to do it at the end.
Okay. And
if we have time.
On that, you'll find it's an interactive guide, and you go right to those activities and links. If you're using career information systems currently, many of them, I mean, the things that have happened in the last 2 years alone has been amazing. But a lot of stuff is going on. We've got a career information systems out of Oregon that supports a lot of the states. They have a huge amount of activities that are all available. And other vendors that are out there are quickly putting up kind of more activity-based things so that educators can design a curriculum around it. And yes, you should be able to click you should be able to click right from the PowerPoint when you've downloaded it. Or I guess you can actually do it on here. Is that right? You can click from here and it'll take you to it as well.
Right, yeah. You can, for those of you watching, you can click on it right now. It should open in another tab in your browser.
Okay. Good question on this one. So how would you recommend that we recruit more non-traditional genders into various careers? Well, let me tell you a story about that. So working in Singapore, at one point I was at the Center for Education and Work at Wisconsin, working with the WISC career system, and we got a great contract to work in Singapore. And one of the school counselors told me a story about how this child, a male child, was wanting to be a male nurse. And he stopped coming to school because his father was very upset with this career choice and basically said, no, you're not going to do it. So the school counselor finally tracked this child down, heard the story, asked what was going on, and what he said to the child was, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the assessment information that you've completed on your career assessment, and I want you to take that home, or actually it was online. I want you to sit down with your family, and I want you to show it to them. Okay? Now, in doing that, they're looking at both traditional and non-traditional careers because they're all coming up through this interactive assessment tool. And in doing that, the child came back the next day and said, my father looked at it and he agrees that male nurse looks fine. So this idea that if we can help support youth with information about what is going on, what it's about, I think that can help break through. I think so there is definitely, from the male end, moving into non-traditional careers is one level. And I think the economics, the education, and really getting into that process can help them more thoroughly think about it. And of course, we know we need role models and work-based learning to support it as well. For girls, especially, now I'm going to focus it on STEM, this issue of meaningfulness becomes really important. So not only helping them understand that they do have the skill sets, but that in addition to the skill sets, there's something about these STEM careers that can connect to something bigger, something that's more relational, that's supporting community, supporting others. So certainly medicine is an easy lift, and right, helping people, supporting their well-being and all that, and becoming a doctor. But there are other areas, especially in the engineering field, as I mentioned earlier, where these grand challenges that are going on are huge for the health of the whole Earth and planet. How do we help girls see that they could have a vision in that? I think it's by helping them explore it, helping them learn about it, and then bringing in some other information. I know that the University of Wisconsin, again, has just completed an iTest project. It's out of the National Science Foundation, where they did career development for girls, specifically focused on them. It was for the whole school, but it was really helping girls see how the grand challenges can connect to them with respect to their career interests. And it was mobilizing educators to see the perspective. It was mobilizing the girls to see it. And so the iTest was actually the design and development of this kind of curriculum. So it included both the self-exploration and career exploration, but also content about the importance and relevance. And just want to say again, if we're going to focus on the girls aspect of it, that middle school is critical. Yeah, so let's talk about math and reading skills as barriers. So the perspective on this, now we're coming at it as career development, and our goal is to motivate, to engage. We know that when youth have a plan or a goal, they become engaged. Having worked in a very low-income urban school in Milwaukee on the south side, I've seen kids come in with 4th and 5th grade math and reading scores, make tremendous efforts, and just grow grade level after grade level once they found a goal, once they found a reason why they were in school. Someone had mentioned about the resiliency stuff. It was when I was doing these resiliency-based interventions to say, let's take a look at your career goal. Let's identify the skill sets that it takes to be successful in school and in life. Things like confidence and stress management. And it was about social connections and about that sense of motivation and why you're here. As they got connected to those and had meaningful relational conversations about it, they exploded. We've got a huge number of very intelligent, smart children that do not yet have the math and literacy skills to show just how intelligent they are. Once we support them in finding a reason to be, if you will, a reason for what they can do with that, and we provide them with opportunities to grow those skills. I think my belief is we're going to see grade level improvements. Not just scores, but grade levels are going to grow. Let's see, what was the list of states that are doing this work? So if you go to the, I'm going to come back a slide, or I'm going to go forward a slide. No, I was on the right slide. The very bottom here where it says ILP Resources homepage, if you go to that page on the right, about halfway down, you'll see the states, our list of all the states that currently are either endorsing or mandating ILPs, and some of which are in process. And so you'll see the list there. Other questions?
See, Scott, we do have questions over on the right. You can see these were not answered during the presentation.
Okay.
You talked a little bit about the resiliency, and I don't know if you want to make more comment on that, and then we have the next two.
Yeah, let me just do a little bit on resiliency. So this conversation, right, is specific to helping youth kind of find meaning and purpose, and then finding the relevance of the education pathways to support them in reaching those goals, you know, and what that's about. What resiliency does, or the kind of the resiliency component to the work I do, is helping students realize that to be successful, it's about learning how to learn, and that's the self-efficacy component. And really teaching them, and we do this in adults, by the way. I started this at the 2-year college and 4-year college, and it was an amazingly a big hit to have these kinds of conversations, especially for students of color, for older students that were coming back. But it really resonates in the middle and high school as well, where they're learning and they have an opportunity to learn about these kind of building blocks of life success. That it is about learning how to learn, and we know self-efficacy, there's 4 sources of building that competence. We know that the social relational connections is really important and how we build those. Stress and health management and learning, you know, we don't talk about stress and health a lot, but yet we know that health status, and we're hearing with all the Obama stuff and Obamacare and all that, health access is critical to success and being able to be healthy. But a lot of our kids are not making necessarily the right choices, and so they're staying up late. You know, they're engaged in a lot of imbalance in their lives, and understanding that and having a place to have a conversation can help them make choices about how they want to right-size the stresses and responsibilities. And then we also have the pieces around goal setting, which is an important part of that, and then certainly the motivation in terms of finding meaning and finding relevance in the work they do. So what the resiliency angle does is it's really focusing on helping assess where students are at, giving them information that gives them an idea of where they fit on that information, because this comes from research that says that students need access to that kind of self-evaluation, self-review, and then thinking about and working through plans within a natural, normal setting, because this is all normal, natural stuff, where we with an adult can talk through it. So that's kind of the basis of some of the resiliency areas, and lots of research supporting that each of those components relate to success. So the question about math and reading skills being a barrier, absolutely it's a barrier. I mean, we need to focus on that. The question is, here's the problem we have. By providing students with really high quality math and reading skills, does not by itself motivate them to want to learn. And I think we found through time that when students don't want to learn, they're not going to. So what we're focusing on from the career development end is we're the engine. We're the reason why they want to take advantage of these opportunities. And it's that combination then of being in a very enriched, engaged learning environment with a sense of meaning and purpose as to what I want to accomplish personally and how I'm going to use this learning environment to be successful. That shift in identity, where school is the pathway to my success, is very different than school is a place where I have to go to sit for hours on end. Okay, and it's that self-regulated, kind of involved and determined individual that we're trying to create through the career development. Let's see, is there a system I recommend for these online systems? No, I do not, for lots of reasons. I work with all of them. I know all of the people that are behind the systems. They're fabulous people. They work very hard. I've always been struck by how much they want their systems to really be relevant and useful, but I do not jump in with respect to making decisions. We do have in the policy brief ideas about what you should consider when you're deciding to go into a contract with systems. The vendors know that I have this conversation with you all. They also know that, because I presented to them about ways in which I think their systems need to be improved. Those are in the policy brief. And so that yes, it's not that I'm not challenging them to improve, but I just want to say that the vendors themselves are great people. The owners of them are in there for the right reasons, and they really do work hard to do great work. You just have to decide which system will work best for your particular context.
The one person, Scott, is asking about can you hear me?
Yes.
About the states, they didn't know where the list was. Can you repeat that, please?
The list will be on this page where it says ILP Resources homepage. I'm going to click on it on mine just to give you the actual link and what it says. Under Practices and Resources, it says ILP Usage by State. And it's the ILP Usage by State that has a PDF, and it lists every state, what they call it, and in some ways whether it's mandated or whether it's in process or where they're at, and the date, I think, in terms of when it started.
Okay, you have another question, let's see, that has to do, well, maybe we've gotten those answered. Let's see. Look at Kathy Johnson's. I haven't brought it over, but it's just above Jeanette Thomas there. The connection you make are excellent, but some of my students are so far from connecting gaming, addiction, poor nutrition, insufficient sleep, etc. with success likelihood in a post-secondary success. We sure work on this individual you are describing, but I think we need PLPs for parents. Oh.
Yeah, so yeah, Kathy, I mean, a good point. And I think that, I was talking about the resiliency piece, that at some point that caring adult that's having a conversation, right, with the child and in a group setting about what are the challenges that are going to keep them from actually achieving the goals that they know they want, right? And that's the key. What this process does is that it helps the child say, wow, that looks really exciting. That's something I'm interested in pursuing. Once we have that, we now have leverage, because now we can have the conversation about what's getting in the way. Now, the gaming part we got to be careful on, right? And there are some good literature, and there's a person out of Southern California at Dominguez Hills, there, Cal State Dominguez Hills or UC Dominguez Hills, one of those, doing some fabulous work on looking at addictions and when is it and how is it. We have to be real careful, because the reality is that gaming is a great place for learning, and there's a lot they're getting out of gaming that we're not connected to. And I know it's outside our realm, and I've got a little boy now who's all over Minecraft, and so I'm going through this as a parent and limits and all of that. But I also know that there's a great positive that can occur. But when we talk about health, sleep, the food they're eating and all of that, all of those elements, even gaming and how much time they're putting in and setting boundaries, I believe we as educators do have leverage if we can support them in getting that extra carrot. And yes, that doesn't mean that we're not disincluding parents or we're not involving them. And I'm a big fan, and I've got the data to support some of this, that we've got to get parents involved, especially that you'll find that pathway in the John Miller and Linda Kimmel article and the one that I did as well, that parent press for supporting them around being successful in STEM has a huge role to play in their overall success. And so we do need to get parents more connected to this process.
Thank you. This next question, not to beat a dead horse, but there does exist a bottleneck of potential STEM students stuck in remedial math courses. How closely do you work with these folks who are in the remedial arena at the community college level?
Thank you. Good question. So let me tell you a little story. So I was working with one of our two-year colleges, and they had a remedial algebra course in which 90% of their students did not complete the course before the end of the term. And I suggested to them, actually I didn't suggest, I just stated, which I thought was a pretty good fact, that the methods and the process they were using for this course weren't working. And they looked at me and said, well, how can you say that? And I said, well, because you're losing 90% of your students. And I suggested to them that rather than teaching math in a sequential way, that we create a laboratory. We create a lab environment in which a student, knowing that they've got family and they've got jobs and they've got other issues that are getting in the way that sometimes will create a press for them not to be able to get back into the class during that very sequential learning, create a lab opportunity with these online systems and a tutor, an educator who's now a real coach, a math coach, to support them, but let them come in and work at their own pace to move as quickly as they can. In doing that, that's step one, in doing that, an individual is going to be able to make up those grade levels and skills in the time period that they've got available. It may be that they're coming in intensively during a week, it might be a weekend or whatever, but we know that it's going to catch them where they left off. And that it's not that we've got a course planning that's going at a level that they can't keep up with, it's designing the system to work with them within the resources and the time that they have. So that's step one. Step two, the AccuPlacer. We've got to stop using the AccuPlacer as the gatekeeper. What the AccuPlacer says is, you know what, you may not have the skills to be successful in this class. This is successful in a non-remedial class. So what do you need to support you in being successful? A, you might have to take it twice. That's fine, nothing wrong with that. Two, you might want to get a tutor. You might need a work group. You might need some extra attention. Rather than not allowing them in the course, why don't we focus on the resources and support systems that they will need based on the data that's coming in? And so that's my feedback on that. I have very strong feelings about this too. This is a social justice and equity issue that we know the minute we add in all of these remedial courses, they're going to be stuck. It's not saying that they have the skills. What I'm saying is let's design systems for them to gain these skills, because a lot of these students are very, very intelligent. They've had emotional connections with school that have looked at them and said, you don't belong here. They're coming into that two-year college saying, oh, I haven't belonged before. I'm looking for cues again. When you redefine that to say, not only do you belong here, but we are going to work with you to be successful, that can be the game changer. And yes, it might take an extra semester or two for them to build it, but they're building. They're not just looking for data to say, can I or can't I? They're focused on learning how to learn and building their skill set. So very strong feelings about the need to redesign the remediation structure and how we use feedback and how we give it to the student. That it's not us telling students they're good, they're bad, they're capable, they're not. It's feedback. And how can we use that feedback to support them in their continued development? I guess I have a couple of feelings about that.
We have another question, and it will probably be our last or next to last. Do you have any examples of a fast-track module for career development of community college students that are required to choose a major early in their career?
Fast track, isn't that interesting? So my initial is going to say no, but what I'm going to suggest is that what we have in these ILP resources is the ability for you to design it. So in other words, you know that there's going to be some self-exploration, there's going to be career exploration, and then the career planning and management, or career planning and management. Those can be done in any form. You could do it as a week intensive. It could be a transition into college where they're doing some activities, and so you might have some additional skill sets they're doing, but one part of that day for each of those 5 days is working on this, and what you're building then is an ILP, and you're building the basis of it, and it allows them then to begin to explore and see what's going on. Within those career information systems, many of them have the ability to showcase how the person's skill sets, their interests, their values can fit within these different career opportunities as indicated by college majors. They can flip them into those majors. They can then go in and explore those majors in more detail to see what looks interesting. Now, we know the first couple of years is going to be more general ed, but we also know they've got to have a little opportunity to get into something specialized so they can really keep their interest up. So this will allow them to start that shopping. But then we need them to leave that program with an idea of what their next steps are. Is there some volunteer experiences? Is there some apprenticeships? Is there some additional kind of work-based learning that they need to get to continue clarifying and really experiencing what's going on? So I do think we can do it. I'm not necessarily a fan that they need to have that major defined. What I am a fan of, though, is understanding how to go about making that definition. That these are the processes and skills that I need to go through. And so we can go through that continuously. Another option you can have, and maybe it's not as much a fast track, but it's still one you can do, is to use that English class as they come in, that first English class, work with the English instructors to build a conversation about their career pathways, right? So it would have to demonstrate the self-exploration, career planning management, and for the English teacher, it's a writing activity, but what it does is it draws them into the Career Development Center to do a set of experiences and resources and activities so they can build this kind of end of the semester kind of piece. UC Santa Barbara did this very successfully, and what it showcased for the student was how and why the Career Center exists. And so students, the actual rate of use after that English class was tremendous. They had a huge number of students, and the percentage of that population using the Career Center throughout their academic career was quite high. So that's another way of doing it. I know, so doing it either as a summer transition or a first semester kind of English class, I think either of those can help them build those skill sets.
Thank you. I wanted to just acknowledge that in the chat function that Deb has talked about a self-paced math course that has been used, and it has had outstanding results. So everyone could look at those, see the dialogue that's going on there. And our last question will be, what exactly is a non-traditional student? And I know that there's there's definitions about non-traditional, but will you define it as to what you all are using in your programs?
Asking me specifically, or asking people to put that in the chat?
No, you.
Okay.
It's asking, what are you?
Yeah. So from my perspective, there's different ways we can talk about non-traditional. From a career research perspective, non-traditional was used in the 70s to talk about those careers that were underrepresented by a particular gender or race and ethnicity. Specifically, though, it was really the gender that brought out the whole process. And so this was some work in the self-efficacy field, especially, that was by Hackett and Gail Hackett and Nancy Betts, where they found that girls were not focusing on science, not moving into the science careers at the same rate that boys were, and that they found that self-efficacy was one of the key pieces, that if they found girls with more math and science self-efficacy, they were more likely to be selecting in to what then was termed the non-traditional career pathway. Then we've had a huge growth in understanding girls' math development, and girls' math scores have really improved in their grades and their engagement. But we're not necessarily seeing, especially in fields like engineering, the same rates of growth, right? We're not seeing girls entering into engineering at the same levels. And so I think from there we're really focused on non-traditional in that way. But there's other ways in which non-traditional gets used. We can talk about the non-traditional student. So that would be the student who may have gone out, done some work, and is now coming back into school, or did education, worked, and is now wanting to change their career pathway. And those have also been used in terms of the words non-traditional as the non-traditional student. And it's because those students may have different kinds of support systems that are needed. And all of the things we're talking about today are relevant for them, both the resiliency as well as the career exploration. So those are a couple of ways. But Fred, if you have some additional ideas on that, that would be great as well.
There is a legal definition or from law that says that a non-traditional career is one where 25% of the people participating in that career are of one gender.
Okay.
So if we have less than 25% of female, I mean, we have a career and 75% of the career has only males in it,
right.
Then that would be a non-traditional for the females.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then it's, again, as the summary of this kind of presentation is that by helping them really explore their interests, values, and skills and how they actually match well with those careers, learning more detail about what those careers really are, gathering some work-based experiences with role models that are going to match up well to kind of really see what's there and what it's about, that's kind of the recipe for helping to shift this model forward. And I'm also suggesting that that's one way to go. As we talk about girls specifically in STEM, it does get more complex because it's not just seeing people in it. There's a meaningful value that comes to what the STEM can do. So it's not necessarily building bridges, but providing clean water. Though that shift in example all of a sudden can capture girls' interest and keep them moving towards something when in fact they have the interest and skills as they're moving into that middle school.
Well, I think that it's time for us to move forward. So let's look at your, this is your contact information, right, Scott?
Yes. So we've got our the National Collaborative for Workforce and Development for Youth, which is the Technical Assistance Center, and Curtis Richards and Mindy Larson are two that I work with there. And then our funder is the Office of Disability Employment Policy from our Department of Labor, and they are very focused on career and workforce development for all youth, and they've been great at not only providing kind of the funding support for this, but it's not the normal kind of project. They're as interested in how we succeed at this as anyone else. And so constantly we're re-looking at the projects we're working on to make sure we're developing resources for you. So I really want to say it's nice to have an agency that's very responsive.
Well, we've done our question time, so I'm going to turn on my cam. And I want to say thanks to Scott. I learned a lot today, and I really appreciate the information. And my action item from this webinar is I live in a small community. We have a district that has an elementary, a junior high, a high school, and we have a community college in our county. And I plan to contact the principals, the superintendent, and also the counselor at our high school that they might look at this webinar and think about considering doing these plans for students. It just was a fabulous, someone said it was a fabulous presentation, Teresa did, and I agree with you. And I do thank you. I thank also the Minnesota Department of Education, the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, NAEP, and the National Science Foundation. I also want to thank all the participants today. We had a wonderful turnout, and I want to encourage all of them to join the virtual learning community and view any of the archived webinars, including this one that will come again if you want to look at it again on the stemequitypipeline.org website. Also would like to encourage any of you to join NAEP at our Professional Development Institute that occurs in Arlington, Virginia, April 7th to the 11th. You can register at the NAEP website, naepequity.org. Just thanks again for participating. We hope you'll join us in our next webinars that are coming up, and I also want to ask you to complete an evaluation, those of you that are still on, and we'll be sending it out to everyone. If you want a certificate of completion, then you need to complete page 2 of the evaluation survey. These only go to our evaluator, so we won't be looking at that, and it will be confidential. And I think that that's the end, and just thank you so much again, Scott.
Well, thank you.
It was an excellent presentation.
Okay.
And you can see right now that Greg is putting up the link for our survey. It'd be great if all of you could fill it out right now. Oh, I have multiple attendees typing. Look at this, Scott. Wonderful presentation. Many useful ideas. Thanks. We learned a lot. Thank you so much. Great.
All right. Well, thank you. Really nice. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Well, they're still just coming in. Thanks from Oklahoma. Just multiple attendees are typing. I'm just watching them come in. So
great.
Great.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you, and have a good rest of the day, and hope everyone has good weather.
All right.
Talk to you later. Bye.